All right. Okay, I think it started. I want to discuss a topic about using Helm for Konflux CI. I have a few slides, then we can hopefully talk about it. So let's start with what we have right now, which is Konflux CI and Konflux in general. We're using Customize. Specifically, I'm talking here about in upstream Konflux, about the way we deploy Konflux core services rather than the dependencies. And the points about it and the things that I want to mention is that the transparency is very low in terms of the customizations that the users can do when they deploy in Konflux. And if they want to change anything, and we saw that when internally we deployed the Fedora cluster, for example, we need a really deep understanding of whatever is going on within the manifests. And users, it would be impossible for them to customize it for their own needs. So users, they are able to install on kind. It's not easy for them, but if they want to install on some other environment, it would be very hard. Very hard. And the way we see it, if we want to have a successful open source project, we need to make it easier for users to deploy the code, to deploy the solution. So this made us think about Helm, self-proclaimed as the package manager for Kubernetes, CNCF graduated. The customization that we can offer there, we can have a schema that will include the customization for Konflux CI as a whole and for the constructed subchart and have for the different core services, and they have their own schemas, which they will be customized and then wrapped inside a higher level Helm chart that will provide its own customization. The schema will validate whatever the users would like to do, which can make it easier for them to deploy in different environments. And I mentioned here at the end that if we look at the CNCF graduated project, almost all of them which are deployed in Kubernetes, they provide Helm charts, either the community provided or within the project itself. So trying to take that and doing some sort of prototype for deploying the upstream Konflux with Helm. Yeah, it looks like that. You just deploy it in a few minutes, it's up. And another screenshot here for example, in Konflux CI, we deploy, if we want to deploy image controller, then in Helm, this sort of customization will look like this, but this is only a very simple example for customization. In reality, we would be talking about stuff which would be much more significant than installing image controller as part of deploying Konflux CI, which currently, when in our current process, it's a different step that's happening after deploying Konflux. So here it's an example of a customization that you can do as part of deploying Konflux rather than as a step afterwards. So this is like a prototype of how it can look like, but what are the challenges? So in order to come up with to make this prototype, I used Helmify, which is just an example of a tool for converting a manifest to Helm charts. But this process, it provides some automation, but it's not something that we can just automatically generate the charts from the manifest and use them as is for free. We had to tweak them, and it doesn't seem practical in the long term to have this sort of specific patches to fix the automatically generated Helm charts. And we cannot have in Customize. We can have reference to other customization files, remote customization files. In Helm, we cannot reference. We can reference remote Helm charts. We cannot we cannot reference customized files in Helm. So if we want to actually use Helm, then we need to provide Helm charts on the core services that we want to reference. So to summarize this experiment and what we can do next, we see Helm as a big plus for having Konflux CI, something that a community can adopt, and to have a community. But in reality, it will require dropping Customize and using Helm instead. And we're talking about Konflux CI, the upstream Konflux, and the core services, the controllers. Second. Mentioning that infra deployment will still be using Customize. We already have an example for that, for using for referencing a Helm chart in infra deployments in crossplane. We're referencing crossplane Helm charts rather than customized files. And build definition, technon tasks and stuff like that, they're still going to be used customized files they're using at the moment, so it's not anything. It's not about that. And what we are proposing as the Vanguard team is to come up with this initial implementation of the charts, and then hand it over to the different teams to maintain afterwards. This is in case we decide the program to move to Helm. So that is it for me, and I would be happy to see what you're thinking, to hear what you're thinking. Any thoughts? Yeah.
So I think, Greg, you had put in the chat that kubearchive had initially was using Helm and abandoned that approach. I don't know if you want to maybe elaborate on that a little more.
Yeah, we just thought that the overhead for Helm we didn't want, and it was a dependency we didn't want to have on the project. We wanted to be able to be standalone, and we didn't want people to have to know Helm in order to install kubearchive. It just seemed like a dependency we didn't necessarily need. And I did look around at some of the other projects, and a lot of projects. I mean, I see this. This is a big plus for the open source projects adaptability. I don't know if that's true or not. I looked at a number of projects, and a lot of them weren't using Helm. Some were. So it's probably whatever you prefer.
How would you summarize the effect of after moving to Customize?
Well, we haven't had any problems, right? But we're not that big either, right? So I'm not, comparing Kube Archive to Konflux isn't a good comparison because Konflux is much bigger. So I don't want to skew things and say that it was trivial, but we haven't had any issues with it. But again, we're not doing there's not a lot of components for us to be installing in Kube Archive, relatively speaking. It's a it was just simpler for us, I think, and I personally found the complexity of trying to depend on other Helm charts very confusing for me, and it was just difficult. But that's again, that's just one perspective.
Okay, it's good to have that perspective. Thank you.
I wanted to share some examples that I think are illustrative. We're all used to working with Red Hat's infra deployments repo, where Red Hat instances are managed, and we're using Kustomize there, and we know how to use Kustomize to make all that work. The link I just shared is a link to the gitlab.com repo for Fedora's infra deployments, and it shows some not unfamiliar Kustomize here. This is an example of what somebody who's not a core Konflux contributor would need to do to deploy build service. They have to patch a config YAML like this, which is like awkward. It's this big string that's not structured YAML. They have to know and make sure that it's formatted right. This one is not that bad, but take a look at this one. Here's the next link in sidebar. This is for the UI in the Fedora deployment, and it's just tons more patches, right? If this is already set up for you and you're working on it, then it's easy to patch and do things. But if you're setting this up for the first time, you're trying to set up your instance of Konflux somewhere, this is a lot to figure out with the patch semantics of Kustomize. It's weird. So I like the idea of moving to Helm and it giving us an explicit schema that somebody would have a well-known set of configuration options that they can set for the UI, for their instance, and they plug them in a variables file, and off they go. They don't have to reverse engineer at which points in our YAML certain objects are so they can patch them or replace values and so on. That's the value proposition for me.
Thank you. Louis?
Yeah, a couple questions, just so I understand this better. Is there, so we use Argo CD for, deploying a lot of these things. I'm assuming there is enough hooks in Argo CD to deploy a Helm chart instead via GitOps kind of workflow. And maybe you already looked into that, so maybe if you could speak a little bit about that. And also, is there a path forward where we can deploy some components with Helm as we gradually adopt Helm? Or does this have to be like, we got to switch everything to Helm all at once, which might make adoption a little bit more challenging?
Yeah, so for Argo CD, we are already using that with Crossplane. We are deploying Crossplane, and we are referencing a Helm chart there. And regarding whether we can use whether it have to be all at once or one at a time, I think it can definitely be one at a time. Alex?
Yeah, regarding the Crossplane thing. So we actually have two options from Argo CD. So you can either just directly reference a Helm chart directly, or you can still use Kustomize to reference a project that has a Helm chart inflation generator inside of it. So in the case of Crossplane, we are using Kustomize still to provide the overlays on top of the Helm chart. So we have a combination there. So you can take either option.
Thank you.
I would say that this combination of using the customized in Helm, I see it as let's say a rescue mechanism. Let's say if you need to fetch something quickly You cannot wait for adjusting the Helm templates. Okay, you can patch it additionally with customers, but then those patches will be removed and the configurations will be added to the Helm charts if it makes sense long term. And at the end of the day, we want users to be able to just take the Helm chart and deploy Konflux without needing customers. And to know all the Konflux internals.
Okay. Might be the next step would be to come up with an ADR and see what's the reaction.
I think that sounds right. How do I feel about doing a poll on the call to see if people feel positively or negatively about the proposal, or do you just want to save that for the ADR?
Yeah, I'm okay with that. I don't know how would it be a good representation of the overall theme, but I'm fine with that. Louis?
Yeah, I think maybe an alternative to move forward, just to think about, is try to do this with a couple of components. Let's have some soak time, see how that works, and then reconvene to see if this is something that we want to have an ADR and then have this across the board.
What do you mean by trying to do it?
So let's say, we pick a certain component. I'm just going to pick a random, like integration service is going to be the next one that does this. So we go out and we do it, and then we update it for deployments to use Helm charts. And then we have some time to experiment, to see how things are working. And then if we determine that, oh yeah, that turned out to be a really good experience, then we can move on with like creating an ADR and actually trying to get consistency in all the components to follow that the architecture. I'm just a little bit hesitant about start going directly into an ADR when none of the components that we write for Konflux are using Helm. So if possible, I'd like to take the approach of let's try in a couple of components, see how that goes, and then use that as learning, so we can either create an ADR or, unlikely, but we can decide that, oh, this actually is not what we wanted and we don't want to move on with it. Does that make sense?
I'm fine with that. Yeah.
I like that also. Then maybe the next challenge is figuring out which component is the component to prototype it out.
So it's not clear to me how this works. You're going to implement a feature potentially without an ADR. And then you're going to have the ADR, which would have to be approved as is because it's already implemented.
No, not quite. The idea is to try it for one component. And if it proves to be positive, then the ADR would in a way be making a decision to legislate it across all the components.
But it'll be part of this one component. So it'll be committed and released and all those things. So it's going to be part of Konflux, whether the ADR is approved or not.
Sure, for one component. I think if we figure out that we don't like it, we should have the option to roll that back, right? To escape back to customize. Be some wasted work, but we would have learned something from it.
Definitely. Okay. How do you? I think we can continue. Yeah. Anyone want to say something?
I'll just want to call out that from my own experience working with Helm charts, it's not like you have to remove your existing Konflux configuration. You can absolutely keep that customized as your base, create your separate charts directory to set up the Helm chart, do whatever you want, frankly. The code doesn't have to, it doesn't require removal. You can have that alongside. And again, we treat that as this is an experiment. If we like it, we roll forward, propose it out more broadly. If it doesn't work, we learn something.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, I think we can move to the next topic, maybe.
Awesome. Thank you, Check.
Thank you.
Adam, I think you're up next, Adam.
My topic's a little more open-ended, and it looks like the other two might be a bit shorter, so maybe we can have those two go first, and then we'll save my topic for last.
Sure. Simon, are you on? Are you ready?
Yeah, just a second.
Yeah, sure.
Oh, shall I do the slightly longer slide deck, or shall I just tell you the new name? Let's do the slide deck. It should be fun. No, that's not it. Oh, spoiler. Start again. Slideshow. So we've been talking about this for a long time. We want to give enterprise contract a new name. This is a not very serious intro here. Fedora community top 5 least popular words in the style of Dave Letterman. So you get the idea. So of course, Fedora community don't love the name enterprise contract. And because we want to start building Fedora using Konflux, they're going to be using EC soon. So they want to, confront this. And I think the name, we've never really been in love with the name. It's an okay name. It grew on us, but we think we can come up with something better. Quote from Shakespeare. So you might come up with this list of things that make a good name. This is just a few of the easy ones. You wanted to evoke the right themes and the concepts and the kind of functionality your project has. As I said, we've been doing this for a while. We've got Miro boards and Slack threads and so on. We've kind of all gotten bored of it because, after a while, it's like, forget about it, don't care, let's talk about something else. So, it's hard. It's harder than you think. Maybe AI can help. Not really. We talked a lot about the initials. So we have EC in a lot of places, including the command line. Maybe we can somehow keep that. So these are some ideas. Other random names, we went through a bunch. Thanks for those who are kind of helping us and suggesting names, and we appreciate that. Some of those names are actually pretty good, but until now, we've never really felt like we had the right name. So pause for drama. Conforma. This is the name we've come up with. That's how it looks without the logo. So it's pretty memorable. You can spell it, you can pronounce it. If you Google Conforma, you do find a few things, but I think that's kind of true for whatever name you come up with. We can get a good domain name. It's kind of, it feels good. I don't know. It's hard to define exactly what makes it inspirational, but sure, why not? Doesn't mean anything weird in other languages, hopefully. Here it is again. with the logo. This was kind of a pitch deck to my team and other stakeholders. So we were going through some alternatives. The K one was a front runner for a while there. The shorter version, it's really, if you Google that, you're going to get thousands of things. So I think not as good. Some other options we wanted to look at, but anyway, we sort of settled on the Conforma. So you might say, does it really matter? I think so. Let's pick a good name, and certainly we don't want to do this twice. So let's make this the last time we talk about it. There's a bunch of stuff we've got to figure out as we go forward. Are we going to rename our Red Hat build with RHPass? Are we going to, what about the command line? What about the Konflux tasks, etc.? We'll figure all that out as we go. Don't need to make them blockers for anything. Someone raised the question of the logo. We can figure that out later too, but I mean, I'm not against having a new logo if we come up with a good one. I'm not sure our existing logo needs to be replaced. Maybe it's fine, but we can talk about that. We do want to, first thing, we want to update the upstream docs and the website where we have our upstream content. So that's the first part. And this slide deck's been around for a few weeks, so I was putting a little status here. To compare, that's our old name. Here's our new one. The font might get some tweaks, whatever. That's our kind of tagline, and those will be our, online homes going forward. And that's it. So thank you very much. Any comments? If you hate it, I don't especially want to know right now, but feedback's welcome.
Yeah, tons of thumbs up. There's some discussion in sidebar that's maybe interesting, Simon, but that's awesome. Thank you.
Cool. All right. Thanks again.
If no other thoughts on that, if you have one, raise your hand. Otherwise, we'll go on to Carol. Are you ready for accessing Tecton Results API?
Yes, I am, but I feel bad for not having slides.
You're here. Your audio is super quiet for me. Can you check your mic input volume?
Okay. I will try to figure this out. How about now? Any difference?
That's better. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. So so I just joined other people who were talking about exposing Tecton results, and what I would like to walk through today is basically our use case and how we want to use it. Because it might be the case that Tecton results might not be the best way how to integrate Konflux with the other systems. So let me share the screen, and I will show you a tool that is called Logilica, which is basically an engineering ops intelligence tool, which gives us an ability to get data from issue trackers, CI systems, code coverage, and all the things, and store them in an underlying data model and build some kind of a metrics, gets insights into what is going on. And the tool has multiple integrators or connectors at this point. So we can get data from Jira, GitHub, GitLab, and so on. However, it also has a way how we can manually push the data from the API. And as we keep onboarding the teams within the developer group, and this is a pilot that we are running in developer group, we obviously will have teams that are using Konflux as their primary CI/CD tool. And the dashboard that I'm just showing gives us some insights into the CI based on the data coming from GitHub Actions. So the question is, can we get the same data into the tool from Konflux pipelines execution? And if we had that, what the tool will do for us is the data will be stored in the underlying model. So from the perspective of what we can visualize and what we can enable teams to play with, will not change. It doesn't matter from where the data are coming from, because Logica, the tool we are using, has basically a split model in between the metrics and the data lake in there. So what we were thinking of is to leverage the UI, the API that is there to import the data. And if we look into the CI build data and CI build stage data, they very closely resemble a pipeline and a task, and we are basically looking into specific data like duration, the name, some kind of a linking, and status, and so on. So Tekton results looked like one of the options, because we know that results are stored there in a more persistent way. We would be able to curate it, say, once a day. Logica doesn't provide you with a real-time metrics. It basically has a mechanism that uses the connectors to update the data on a daily basis. So it would be fine if we only run the job once a day. And that way we can get the data from Konflux into Logica and explore this further. The benefit here would be that any team that is using Konflux will be able to see their CI/CD build data. There are probably other options that we might explore. So one of the options would be to enable CD events directly in Tekton and push them into a sink and push the data from the sink to Logica. I feel like Tekton results is easier because it's basically already enabled in Konflux. We can also modify the pipelines to include a task or a step that pushes the data, but that's more, I guess, more complicated, because that would be a maintenance burden. In theory, we could have a controller that pushes the data running as a part of Konflux, but that means another component that needs to be included. So it feels that using Tekton results is probably the least impacting action on Konflux. But I wanted to bring it up here because you folks have far better understanding how this works. I can see some questions in chat. So Logica doesn't support OpenTelemetry as far as I can tell. And Logica doesn't natively understand CD events, but the benefit of using CD events would be that we can work with the vendor to consider implementing CD event-based connector, because this is an industry standard. So I'm really interested to hear more from you.
There's a hand up in Raleigh.
So first, some context. So I do remember, Carol, some of the folks who were working with other folks who were working on Logica integrations were exploring Tekton. This was a while ago, and I had worked with them previously. So one of the things that you brought up was about sort of the model of how the integrators work. can you explain it? Are the integrators, is it designed that it's like a poll or polling based kind of model with the Logilica integrators, or is there maybe a more of a push based model where data can, like something like CD events, could be streamed in real time?
Yeah, so if there's a connector within the Logilica, they are using a poll model. So there's a regular request to scrape the data from the connected systems. If people are using APIs, this is more of a push model. So you can deploy the data at any time. So if we would be using CD events, I think both are possible. In case we would get some native support, it would be easier, but we'll just push the data from CD events, or we can just push the data from Dicton results. I believe it doesn't make a difference here.
I had a question. What is the access and tenant model in Logilica? So like take an instance of Konflux. There might be 100 teams on it, each with their own namespace and their own results. Is there space in Logilica to isolate those from one another so that they can't necessarily see one another's metrics unless they rights?
So there are like multiple levels here. So Logilica does. It is a SaaS service, and they are providing namespaces for their customers. So what we have here is our own space, which is Red Hat specific, but that's probably not what you are asking for. Then we have the additional layer of details with some RBAC specific permissions. But the way how it is implemented right now is we don't have RBAC on the data. We have RBAC on dashboards or on charts. So we can make it very difficult, if not impossible, for the teams to see some specific metrics, but we don't have an easy way how we can avoid the teams to explore the metrics from a different team if they are using the same metric. So for instance, if there is a reliability, the way how this works is there is a, you can select specific repositories on or so, and we don't have a way how we can limit this to only see the repositories that are relevant to a specific team.
Thank you. Then it feels like maybe an important option or important bit about this should be that a tenant inside of a Konflux cluster should be able to opt into this, but not necessarily be automatically enrolled in case they want to ask the presence of their builds from other people with access to the metrics.
Yeah, that's another reason why I believe using Tecton results might be easier, based on my understanding that you can't really set up, at this point, you can't really set up CD events to be namespace specific.
So if it feels like the sort of more polling based model might work better and you want to hit the Tecton results API directly, there is a plugin for TKN that the Tecton community supports. I'd probably call it state fairly experimental. There's a colleague on the OpenShift builds team, Sayan, had published his sort of own flavor of the plugin that in some ways is a lot better. And at one point, we wanted to get that merged upstream in the Tecton community, but that effort had kind of stalled. So this might also be a motivation to take some of the things that are in that plugin, merge it with the that first one, so that this sort of scenario can be supported, particularly getting kind of maybe aggregate data out of Tecton results versus just getting the full YAMLs, which might be which is kind of like what it's designed to do today.
Okay. Is there any difference compared to using OPC, which is another CLI tool that I guess has the capability to access the results?
That's Red Hat's downstream version of it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what Red Hat supports.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Okay. I don't know, like if we have an intention to support Tecton in general, or if we are now only interested in enabling this in downstream. That's probably also something that can be considered in the implementation.
Kind of going back to what Ralph was saying about opting in, to me, what seems like I mean, I guess it depends on your perspective, but for me, what seems like a bigger issue of not being able to have access control for the repositories is it will likely make it unusable to be able to filter on the repositories of interest if you're not already filtered to the ones that might be of interest. So not even considering should I be able to access the metrics for builds coming from some repository, but I don't want to access them. It's a personal choice. I only want to access certain ones and filter on those certain ones. Having to go through, like, even if you have 30 components, having to go through and figure out how to filter on those 30 components out of the 8,000 components that have metrics being exported would be an unusable user experience from the start.
Yeah, I totally agree. And this is something that we have already brought up to the vendor that we need to have a better mechanism how to approach that. And we also have a feature request for RBAC, for more detailed RBAC in their queue. So I think eventually this will be landing in the solution.
And then going back to, you said that you're working with the vendor to try and figure out what type of additional support might be possible. You're saying CD events, which is maybe a certain amount of community adoption, but OpenTelemetry was also noted. And I don't know, like personally, I don't know whether CD events or OpenTelemetry would be better for us to try and say, hey, as a vendor, you should really start supporting this accepted, this community accepted set of APIs and whatnot. I think that, like, from a Konflux community perspective, it feels like a little bit of an anti-pattern if we're trying to adopt what we're doing to specific vendor situations. Instead, if we want to leverage something, we should really try and leverage it through these adopted standards.
Yeah, I think this makes sense. Like from my perspective, the challenge here is that if we need to rely on vendor to implement something, we are tapping into their time, which is, based on a contract and these kind of things. If there is a way how we can enable it ourselves, we can show the value of the solution earlier or show that this is not the right path. So I think eventually integration to CD events or OpenTelemetry is definitely something that should be in their roadmap. But I wonder if there are any ways how we can get some data points earlier. But I think this is a different discussion.
Of course, thank you.
Carol, I'm looking at time, and I'd like to be able to get back to Adam's topic. Are you looking for any other feedback on this?
No, I think thank you for the feedback. However, I still don't know what is the the next step for me. How I can help here, or what should I expect?
I guess so let's follow up async to figure out what the next move is. I think well, yeah, we'll talk.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Adam, you have integration with external issue trackers?
Yeah. So this came as kind of like two different conversation threads that I was a part of that have seemed to have overlapping and converging concerns. So one of the things as we're for like Shipwright and builds for OpenShift, we're building on Konflux, and one of the things that we observed is that particularly with like the EC checks, or now Conforma checks, if the Conforma checks are discovering vulnerabilities that we weren't previously aware of, that we don't have a feedback loop to our issue tracker. So on the product side, we're using Jira, through Red Hat, upstream, Shipwright, we're on GitHub. And there we actually had implemented something where we had a process that was almost like repeatedly just running a like either a nightly scan, and if it detected a vulnerability in a release version, it would publish a GitHub issue for us so that the community became aware of it and took action. So I wanted to sort of bring this here as kind of like an open-ended kind of discussion around if this either has been explored previously or something we want to sort of consider adding as part of the Conforma sort of pipeline, where if there is a vulnerability found in the software that can be fed back to an issue tracker, like creating a Jira issue or seeing if there is a Jira issue related to it, and if not, creating one so that the team can take action.
And to be clear, Conforma is analyzing the attestations that are generated from other tasks.
Yes.
So it's not that there's something special about the Conforma, it's just that Conforma is the point of awareness because that's what is causing the breaking notification.
Yeah, that is a very good sort of clarifying point. Conforma is not doing the scan. It is analyzing results from other scans. And Presemi was part of that conversation, so I think I'll let him chime in. I don't know if he's muted.
Rogue, I think the floor is yours.
Yep.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. So the only question that I have, first of all, I like this idea. The only question I have is related to the fact that to be able to associate the vulnerability scanning findings with a specific Jira ticket or whatever, some kind of ticket. The problem is how you will define what exactly is build, because you need to take the build name somehow associated to the right name in your ticketing system. Because if you detect that, for example, the issue is related to the specific Golang package, you would like to receive a ticket against this Golang package or against your Jira project or GitHub project, sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that would be kind of like the ideal if there's in my mind, it's almost if there's the vulnerability has an identifier associated with it, that identifier can hopefully has additional information for a team, or even if there's just something that notifies that, oh, there's this specific vulnerability and there's a sort of link to it, maybe from NVD or some other source, then if there's that deeper level information, that might have to be something that the maintaining team has to go figure out. I've seen sort of similar things with like GitHub They have like a security thing now where if the Pendabot effectively finds a vulnerability, you can see it and it'll have the sort of full details of what it is and which dependency is affected, and if there is a fix, what the fix is.
Yeah, and another problem, having the right mapping between what is detected and against what component is reported is one thing. Another problem is that most of the scanning solutions is based on retrospective detection, what exactly is used to build something. And that generates a huge list of false positives. So sometimes it's better to rely, for example, on the precise SBOM that could be, for example, generated by hermetic build, and then scan that SBOM to detect what are the potential vulnerabilities in your build instead of doing a retrospective analysis and trying to discover what was used to build something.
Is that not an implementation of the scanner itself that is reporting these results? And so the ability to do that or not to do that would be entirely dependent on which scanners are configured to run after the builds.
Yep, correct. Just to have the right, precise potential tickets open if something is detected, to depend on the scanning solution implemented in your pipeline.
I wanted to say, I think I used to think, or maybe still do think about like this. There's this tension about what we can do or should be doing when we're positioned as the CI pipeline for some project. So, I mean, imagine it's someday you're off trying to fix some bug, and you go and you're working on it in local inner loop, fix it, oh great, and you push it into CI, but suddenly you're blocked because the scanner has found some CVE and it's related to your project, but it's not something that you introduced in your change. It's something where the dependency was already there, but it's just that enough time has elapsed or the CVE has emerged and now you're blocked, and that's frustrating, right? You just want to fix your bug, not have to pivot and go fix and do this other thing. So in part to deal with that, in Conforma, we introduced this idea of leeway so that a CVE, when it does emerge, there's a certain amount of time. So at least you start getting warnings about this so you can remember to come back and fix it later, but it's still awkward. We're presenting you that information at the time, again, when you're trying to get your bug fix in that's unrelated to whatever this issue is. Separately in Conforma, we have this other set of issues where we have these time-based policies where we can, at the organization level, say we want to start forbidding this one RPM GPG key. Containers that include RPMs that are signed with the GPG key foo were allowed yesterday, but they're going to be denied tomorrow or a month from now. And we want people to see that in their CI warnings, that you pass Conforma today, but you're going to fail tomorrow, or you're going to fail a week from now. You should remember to go take action. But of course, this is really inconvenient. They're not looking for that information at that time. They're trying to get their fix out today. So what you're suggesting, Adam, sounds like something we need not just for CVE fixes, but for all sorts of things around Conforma, right? Like upcoming policy changes, date-based things, to file them into a queue where the team can look when they're like relaxed. They finished their last task, ready to go and figure out, whatever, plan the next day. And we should do something about it. It'll be difficult for us to do because we're primarily in this CI mode. And that's the wrong time to be acting like that. Renovate is our one subsystem that is in a different kind of position like that. I don't think it has those kind of capabilities natively, but maybe we should think about what we should be doing about an a Conforma Renovate integration. All right, looking at the queue, I think Louis and then Greg.
Yeah, I really like the idea of pursuing a way to integrate with an issue tracker somewhere. I think there's benefit in doing this, I think, directly from the build pipeline as well as from an integration pipeline where you're running EC. I think an interesting thing that this might open up is if we have a way of creating like a GitHub issue, for example, for something that I'm just going to pick a random one, like RPM signatures check finds, like that, if that task could create an issue on GitHub, it could provide all the context you need for resolving that issue. Because you may notice that a lot of times EC is working on a summary of the data. So it doesn't have all the details of why a check failed. It just says, hey, this check has found 2 failures. Go look at your build pipeline logs and fix it. And I think if there was like an issue filed for you somewhere with all the information that you need, I think that will potentially make things a little bit nicer for the user to figure out what to do.
Louis, would it not be, well, so that's definitely one possible path, but could we also not take the path that we went with the CVE vulnerability data, where the task itself is generating the a blob that has more detailed information than doing an attestation? And so like right now we have the pattern for using the Tecton results to summarize the output. If we, instead of require every task to instrument this additional information or to instrument this additional notification, we can instead say, if a task were to generate output in this format with this information, then we could have some other check being run at by the Conforma execution pipeline. Maybe it's just for push builds, or maybe it's for PR builds too. But then that Conforma pipeline can say, I see all these different attached results that indicate that there are issues that can be fixed, and here's the additional metadata. Let me check to see if there's an issue open. If not, let me trigger an issue to be created.
Yeah, I think there's value in doing both approaches, Andrew, really. So I think what I like about the issue tracker approach is that it allows you to put a lot of information in there, as opposed to an EC violation. I mean, we can stuff a lot of information in there, but there's like this trend of like the more information we put in there, the less the users comprehend. So I think in my opinion, I think there's value in doing both. I think we should continue to do the pattern where scanners attach a detailed report to the image as an OCI artifact. But I also see additional value in creating issue trackers for those as well.
Thanks. I think Greg has his hand up, and unfortunately we're at 12, so I think a lot of people need to drop. So if Greg, quickly chime in.
Yeah, I'll be quick. I wanted to say how impressed I am that the switch to Conforma went so fast. Everybody was able to transition almost immediately to the new name, which was pretty impressive. I also just wanted to point out that I think I'm all for an issue tracker integration as well, but I think there's lots of uses for it. One I can think of is the issue dashboard that I think was created recently, which creates issue resources on the cluster for things that are wrong with the cluster. In my mind, that would be much more valuable if it was creating an issue tracker somewhere where I'm already looking for these things rather than having to go look on the cluster as well. But just as another usage if we're going to go in that direction. Okay. Never got implemented. Okay, so we can do it now.
Yeah, we do it the right way.
Unfortunately, you dropped.
Yeah, everybody's got to run. Adam, thank you for raising it. Thank you, everybody, for discussion.
Thank you. Great conversation.
Have a great day.